Hello and welcome to the Family Agency Leadership Academy, Creating Sustainable Change discussion. Join a diverse group of family leaders and child welfare agency staff as they discuss methods and strategies for creating and maintaining sustainable change in child welfare.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And so for our next topic, I want to dive into creating sustainable change. We've talked a lot about the changes we want to see and the practices we need to improve upon, but how do we make those stick, right? How do we ensure that the work that we're going to put out actually leads to the outcomes we want to have? And so I want to know, and Eddie, this question is for you. What does sustainable change actually include? And what are some good examples of sustainable integration of people with lived experience?
So creating sustainable change, part of that is like building capacity, inviting people to the table. And I'll give an example, like we have a father engagement action team, and we believe in our action team, like, because we are doing stuff. And we invite, fathers, mothers, staff, allies, community partners. We even have a former youth in care in our group. And the work that we're doing is really impacting our systems in child protection and juvenile justice. We even have child support at the table now. We've involved community corrections. We actually have the state prison there as well. And seeing the work that we're doing, it's like, wow, we have to keep this going because we keep coming up with more projects and another project. And it's like, wow, we're helping train our workforce. We're doing workforce development. So that capacity building that we're doing is very important. One of our pillars of our parent partner program is father engagement. So trying to make it sustainable, very important to us. So we have our long-term goals. I remember that we were able to have our peer support program. At first it was grant funded. Now it's part of the service array. Medicaid pays for it. And that's huge. We were lucky that we had that buy-in from the top, that we had a director that believed in what we were doing, and said, wow, this is so important. Having parents with lived experience support other parents to be successful. It was just amazing, because we understand, like, there are things like turnover in our workforce. We're struggling in some areas, but having that support to improve our engagements overall with the families that we work with, very important, because that ultimately benefits the children and their families, right? We want to have family preservation. We want to empower our families. So knowing that keeps it moving, because when we see how successful it is, right? Looking at the data, because we're very data driven. We see those numbers and we're like, wow, this is really working. So let's keep this moving. And that building capacity piece, important, because we're identifying parents, letting them know like how important their voice is, the power of family voice. I've said a bunch of times, like, hey, you guys get a lot of bang for your buck when I come in and I speak, and I'm dropping gems, I'm dropping jewels, and it's impacting people that come in to do training. It affects their casework and their practice for their career. They remember, I always got to call dad. I called mom, I got to call dad too. I can't assume that, and then knowing that, wow, just really only a small percentage of people shouldn't be involved in their kids' lives. So I know what he looks like on paper. I'm still going to make that effort and engage him, because people are worthy of redemption, right? People can redeem themselves. People can find healing. So this is one of the reasons why, we're making sure this is sustainable.
Amen to that, my friend. I mean, I'm sure you'd be dropping gems left, right, and center. I know you all have so far today. And Geraldo, I would love to hear this from your perspective, because I also know that you work with fathers. And that's often a group that we just overlook when we think of people with lived experience, unfortunately. But they are part of this ecosystem and an important one.
Yeah, to me, we got to think of sustainability from like day one. The minute we're thinking about some important change, we should already be thinking about what is that sustainability and what it's going to look like. Sustainability is beyond the funding piece, right? That's one core component of it, but is the change a change that we can literally sustain, right? And to me, you got to mobilize people to co-create the change. And in New Hampshire, in the last 16 years, whenever anybody asked me to lead any change process, that was my first step, is to really think of the teaming and was that teaming, how is that going to work? And Eddie mentioned creating action teams. Action teams are really powerful because you mobilize people from all levels, field staff, moms, dads, young people, community partners. You bring 30, 40 people into the room, all sharing that passion. Maybe it's fatherhood work. Maybe it's creating a new service. Maybe it's creating a peer-to-peer support model. But when you have that mobilized team that is going to co-create what that's going to look like, now you have a lot of champions, right? And they have a lot of people in their sphere of influence. So this isn't the 40 people anymore. This is now hundreds of people that are participating in the design. So you got to have a compelling vision. What is this going to look like in the next 5 years? Second piece, you mobilize the people, and that vision is going to be something everybody's going to be participating, refining, and then we think of the strategy. So how can we get there? So in 5 years, we want to have a peer support model. What needs to be happening in the next 3 years? Where do we need to be? And that group is going to work on then creating a concrete plan. This mobilizing people at the ground level, at all levels, ensures that there is a lot of ownership at all levels of the division or the system, and that the change is more likely to then really take traction. And then, of course, you think of capacity, right? So thinking of the funding, the knowledge, all of those dimensions of capacity building are important. And again, I would like to just put another plug to the Family Agency Leadership Academy, which we're introducing with this video series. This is an amazing resource that can really help states and jurisdictions mobilize people like I'm describing to come together to think of a change that they really want to initiate and sustain.
Now, I appreciate, Eddie and Geraldo, the perspective that you just brought to this, but I want to name something that it's kind of an underlying theme to this. Is like creating sustainable change is hard. Like, let's just name it. It is hard to do, right? And you can think about it from the beginning. You can bring everyone to the table. It doesn't necessarily make it any less difficult to actually do and see through to the end. And so, Katie, I want to bring you in on this. What are some of those challenges and barriers that agencies should anticipate when they're trying to create sustainable change? And what are some of the strategies we can help them with?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Definitely right. I mean, I think the underlying piece of sustainable change is like culture shift, right? And culture change within the agency, and like, how do you build and sustain that? So, I mean, I've heard so many great strategies from other folks today about like the teaming structure that you bring together and the resources. So I think even before the resources were put behind our work, there was this real intentional inclusion of and naming of family voice as one of the ways like we're going to do our work in New Jersey. And so it was named in the strategic plan, which is like a New Jersey, centric document, but it was also named in our larger plans that we submit to the federal government, right? There's communication around it. And then there was this office created, our Office of Family Voice, which sits right at the commissioner's level, right? So we work closely and with the commissioner's office, and there's that leadership, support behind it. And I think what's really interesting, and I think, agencies across the country, this is the work that we're doing right now, which is from, really working to shift from solely child protection focused work to understanding that child protection, child safety sits with family well-being, and that children need to be with their families, and families need to be well in order for children to be well and safe. And so as that shift is happening, right, where in our state, at least, we're seeing numbers of children in foster care go down. Caseloads are shifting. That means that resources are becoming available to do prevention-focused work, right? So some of the resources are actually shifting over to the prevention-focused work in New Jersey, and also shifting towards the work of like, how are we changing how we do our work, which our office is like critical to that. one of those key pieces, really shifting the like how we're doing work as an agency to build on all of the great, data collection, data analysis, the foundation of family engagement and partnering with families on their individual situations. But moving towards like, this is how we're doing our work as a system is by listening to families and really like genuinely actually engaging with them throughout the work to improve programs, change services, change policy. And I appreciated that note too. Like this work needs to be in policy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the expectation that families are a part of our processes to change the system.
I appreciate that. And I love that your office is at the commissioner level, right? Like you are in that decision-making seat and you're saying family voice needs to be a part of that decision-making structure. I love that. And that's exactly what we need. And Kayla, I want to touch on this too. You know what it's like for some of this work to have to take root. So what do we need to have in place for sustainable change to actually take root and be long lasting?
So I think in Hawaii, like because of our lived experience parent partner program is very new. But it's thrived within the past like 3 to 4 years. And I think the big difference that made it last so long is the willingness and the openness to want to work together, right? The willingness and wanting to incorporate different perspectives and be respectful to different perspectives. Also, I think when incorporating lived experience in itself, making sure that the support systems are in play for those lived experience people, making sure that they have enough resources as far as like, making sure that when working with high needs, situations that they have someone to talk to in the middle of the day if they need someone to talk to, or if they have the ongoing just the check-ins with their supervisors, right? Making sure that they're okay and making sure that they're healthy, giving them the space that they need to be able to thrive in their work. And I think on the level, on the state, in the system level, it's about getting in there and sharing, right? Getting in there and having lived experience, share their stories and giving space for the system to listen. Right? For the system to hear their stories and be able to be impacted that way. Because I think that's where it starts, right? It starts from being able to catch it from the heart, hear what families are, not just what is on document, but who they are and what they are, right? In our program, we give space to what we call a family story. We sit down with them and we talk about like, where'd you come from? What are those some of the key moments that you remember growing up, right? What are some of the challenges that you went through growing up? And also, what are some of the challenges you faced before child welfare involvement? What are some of their goals, right? What are some of their wants and desires for their families? When having the department there, when having all the different parties there, we create a space within our program with Epic Ohana that we come in with ground rules, right? That of it being a neutral space. So a space where everybody is entitled to their own perspective, but we're going to come in a way of being respectful to each other, right? And so when parents share their stories in this space, they have the room to be able to be raw and be vulnerable in this space. And for the first time, let them hear who they truly are. And I think when you talk about sustainability, it's about being willing to work together and being willing to hear each other's perspective, right?
No, I appreciate that. You have to be raw and real if you want change. You can't do superficial. Let's be honest. Let's name the hardships. Let's name that. So I really appreciate that point. And Latrice, I know you also do a lot to make sure that sustainable change can actually take root and change. So I'd love to hear your perspectives as well.
Thank you, Tony. So I think it's really important to point out that, Katie mentioned the commissioner level, right? And starting it with leadership. But I also think it starts on the ground level where, we really engage workers in changing the way they talk and the way they speak with families. So it's not them, it's us, and that we're all from the same community, and that every client we're here to help. We are all one mistake, one life disaster, and for us in Louisiana, one hurricane away from needing the same exact help with the people that we're helping. And so keeping that really in perspective And then also just understanding we may not know who has lived experience when we're at the table, right? And so not always identifying or people wanting to self-identify their lived experience and just treating everybody with same dignity and respect as they would if had it been their family member at the same table. So reminding them that we can all change seats at the same table, right? And we all deserve the same respect. So I think it's really about teaching staff when they enter someone's home, how they need to talk to them with respect and understand that everyone came from the same place and we live in the same community and we all want the same things.
I really appreciate the point that she's like, we are all one disaster, one happenstance away from being on the other side of that table and needing the same supports and resources and expecting realistically the same dignity and respect that we are putting out there or that we would want to be put out there. So I really appreciate that point. And again, creating sustainable change is difficult work. It's hard work, but it's also heart work. We are working to change not only our hearts, but the hearts of the children, the families we're working with to say, it's not them, it's us. We're one community trying to make something happen. Like we are one community really trying to do this good work. And so I appreciate that point.
Now that you've had an opportunity to listen to this discussion, consider bringing your team together to discuss how the information you heard can strengthen your jurisdiction efforts towards creating and maintaining sustainable change in child welfare. Take some time to review the follow-up videos and additional resources to learn more about family empowerment and engagement.